Hi, this is Ines from Equality Podcast, episode 2 today. Very exciting. With me is Ash. Ash, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to come and talk to me about quality. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you very much. I'm doing my best to not sit here and make funny faces at you. So,
That's
you
fine
know,
if you want to
I'm
make
doing
funny
my part.
faces. For the sake of people who do not know you, which I can't believe people are watching this, they most definitely will have heard of you. But for the people at home, tell me a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and your relationship to
Uh,
QA.
sure. My name is Ash Rhodes, of Ash Rhodes Consulting. I make very creative naming things. Um, I am a customer support success experience guy. I have been in this business for an uncomfortable number of years. And as a general rule, what I do is I go into companies who either have no customer facing apparatus or very little, or one that is malfunctioning, and I kind of fix it. I am basically a whole lot of empathy barely contained in human skin, which is
I
sounds a
love
little
that.
gross. But um, thank you very much. Uh, as far as QA goes, though, you know, especially you people who are customer support folks,
Hmm.
uh, in very like you might be interviewing or something. They're like, "Hey, what metrics do you pay attention to, or something?" Um, Mine is always QA. Like QA is what I nerd out about. It's what I think is the most important. And one of the first things that I set up in any new company is QA.
Yeah,
So you and I have known each other for a hot minute.
we
And
have.
when you started going into QA, I was like, yeah, somebody that I can just really continue to nerd out with. So with all that, I really hate talking about myself. So let's move on.
Okay, that's fine. We have known each other for a hot minute, and I think one of the things that I really enjoy about us talking about QA is the difference in opinion that we have about what QA is or should be and where it sits within an organization. So I like to start with that. I'm of the
Well, I'm
opinion
right
that
and you're wrong. So we're done. See ya.
ah, very binary of you. Geez. I'm of the opinion that QA should sit as its own department. I believe that it is much more than just performance reviews. I think it's a thing that stands on itself, whereas from our conversations, I think you are more of the opinion that it's a part of a pre existing thing. Correct?
You got to remember that you and I tend to interact with companies at different phases in their
Mm,
growth. So I'm super early as a general rule. Like
right.
I've certainly come in fixed places that are longer established. So I'm usually QA is usually like that one guy, Ash, or one of my leads or
Right.
managers, whatever, which I know makes you cringe and twitch a little bit.
Yeah.
But and don't get me wrong, one of like as soon as I have the budget for it or a big enough team or something, I hire an NS. But
Right.
that, that that's down the road. So yes, I believe that it should sit in the CX department. And the scope has to be small at first because you got to
Hmm.
walk before you can run. A lot of the stuff that you and I have talked about, wherein like it can surface voice of customer stuff and interact with engineering and so on.
Right.
When I'm doing it, CX is doing all of that. If you're
Right.
setting up a CX department well, dude, like that's
They should be
duplication
doing
of
all of
effort.
that. Yeah.
Because you're probably coming in and fixing stuff too when it really comes down to it. Like we do really similar work.
I think so.
I
I
mean,
come
not
in
to,
at different places. So coming in with a team that's just starting is one of the things that I do to help them set up the idea, the concept of QA. Because a lot of times
Mhm.
when you come into a company, regardless of where they are in growth, and you ask them, so what does quality look like for you? What does that mean for you as a company? They look at you and go, uh,
Oh, that's why I'm
that's a
paying you.
really good question. um, so it's not so much the point at which I enter the conversation. It's where are you in terms of how have you structured your CS or CX team within your organization? So what is their purpose? What is their role? What is their growth? Because you can have a really big company. I think we've both worked at companies where that's been the case, where they're massive and they've got a lot of growth and they've existed for a long time, but their customer support team is still like, oh yeah, we need people to talk to customers when they come in, and that's pretty much all it is, right? Um,
Oh, their actual remit is simply to interact with customers. It's not to gather the data and report
right,
it. Got it. Yeah,
right,
absolutely. Where there's no grander vision for
right.
for the CX team. It's not even X. That is pure CS. That's pure customer support.
Yeah,
There's no
nothing
customer
else.
success aspect to that.
Right.
Um, so on. Yeah. Oh,
The
that's a
reason,
very frustrating experience.
yeah, I know, right? That's like these are the places where the customer support people, the only people that have any kind of interaction with customers out of everyone who works in the entire business, they're the ones who are the most undervalued, underpaid, underappreciated, overworked people in the entire, yeah.
Exactly.
A lot of love for our customer support people. Um, in any case, the reason I asked, I remember you saying at some point that you think QA itself is a metric rather than a process onto itself.
Yeah, I literally just said it. And again, I'm not trying to insult your your entire life's
You're
work.
welcome
Please
to.
understand so much. This is this is being recorded, and I'm probably like going to regret saying this out loud. So
Yeah.
many of the metrics that call, whether it's actual CS, support, success,
Right.
experience, are asked to collect and report on are vanity metrics. They
Yeah.
are metrics that, when it really comes down to it, just don't matter at all. It doesn't matter. So when it comes down to it, though, QA is by itself. When you buy the QA department and it is unconfigured, it's nothing. But when
Yeah.
you bring in QA and you configure it, it is infinitely configurable
Right.
to report on exactly what you want. And it can be turned into a score that seeks out and finds problems, solutions, and scores on exactly what you need and want for your team. So, yes, I do see it as a potential metric.
So you said vanity metrics, right? What are metrics that you
Yes.
would consider to be vanity metrics?
Uh, the biggest two for me are CSAT and NPS, customer satisfaction and net promoter score.
Expand on that,
They should not
please.
exist. Happy to. And
Mhm.
clearly, I have a comrade in arms here. Uh,
Yes.
customer customer satisfaction, and well, both of them, honestly, but customer satisfaction is how happy the customer is. Except that when it comes down to it, they could be rating you or the interaction based off of company policy or how quickly the ticket was actually resolved, which has nothing to do with the interaction. Uh, Whether or not they spilled coffee on themselves on the way in, whether or not they
Right,
had a fight with their partner, any number of things that have absolutely nothing to do with it.
right,
Frustrating. NPS, one, shouldn't even be part of supporter success. It's frequently should be like marketing or something along those lines, but
right.
it's literally the exact same problem. But it should be, it's how the mood of the customer at the time. And then further, I don't know if you've ever actually had to dig into the comments that NPS scores, that a company NPS scores.
I can imagine how entirely biased these comments are going to be. Is it things like, oh, I expected the button to be green instead of blue, and that's why, or is it
Tons,
completely
tons of those. There's ones where I never give tens, or I never give tens. I'm giving a seven. But then, especially for international, there'll be people that explicitly say one is my favorite number. You get a one. 10 is
right,
I love the ones that's like 10 is my favorite number. You get a 10. Okay, I'll take that. But so many, like there's cultures where one is considered lucky. Lucky number
right?
one, you get a one. Well, you just screwed me, but
You just,
you know,
yeah.
um, so it's just, and not to be I'm not a numbers nerd, but NPS, the actual math behind it is completely ridiculous. Like,
Yeah, so when you look at CSAT, I think the industry standard, if I remember correctly, is you only get 15% or so of customers that you have talked to as a company that will actually leave the rating.
mhm,
Most of them will not have a comment, so it will just be the rating and nothing else.
yep,
And it just like what does it say? A very tiny part of the people who even bother talking to us are moderately happy about what, like, no. And the majority of customers are not aware of their own bias. They're not going into that based off of rationale, but rather on, their emotion, their emotional level at the time
mhm.
of doing the whole score. And I don't know anyone who is really excited about getting the email. The You just had an interaction with our customer support. Would you take a second to? No, you go straight to the bin, straight to
Yep.
jail.
I'm
Uh,
I'm a professional in this, and even I do not
I don't
go out of
care.
my way to answer every NPS or CSAT score. And I'm even really bad about the most famous bias, which is unless someone has done me a favor, unless someone has done
Yeah,
very well, I do that, which is the worst kind.
yeah. Let's talk about, because obviously you're good at building teams, and you said QA is one of the things that you immediately implement as soon as you start a team. How do you go
Reasonably.
about? Okay, fair enough.
I just want to be clear. Like I do it as fast as I can, but got to make
Right.
sure Christ's not on fire,
But it's
Um,
high up on the priority list, right? That's what I
right.
understood from
Hmm.
what you said. So when
Absolutely.
when you start a team and you start to think about QA, what does that process look like for you? How do you determine what QA should look like for that particular team?
Oh man, that is an excellent question. Um, I would love to claim that I had a like super solid process that I follow each and every time, but I feel like every single time it's a new like let's throw some crap at the wall and see what works type of situation when it comes. And I should not say that out loud because
No,
this is go ahead.
I think that's absolutely perfectly acceptable and very very real for the experience that most people who get into QA have. I mean, I don't know anyone who's gone into QA or starts with a new QA process and goes, right, I know exactly how this is going to play out, because quality looks different for each and every company.
And it's I I almost never stay in the same industry even. So
Right,
I'm going into different industries. Like it's always SaaS, but it's like, I don't know, logistics or ed tech or whatever. And like it's always the same basics,
right.
accuracy, tone, so on. Brain's not providing the words that I need today. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Um, but and so of course I'm going to create a rubric that has like those headers and then sub items off of those. But what does that look like? F if I know, man. Like, and there are all sorts of solutions that are coming out, which I am so psyched for. I just
yeah.
need the price to come down for all of them wildly. Um, that will allow me to select, basically say what all of it is, and I can either do it myself quickly or have an AI
Do the
check it.
magic. Yeah.
It's like magic.
I know,
Um,
right? I'm so excited. Let's talk about AI because it's a hot topic at the minute.
literally everywhere right now.
One of the things that I like to say when we talk about AI, especially in the QA space, is it's more of a question rather than a statement. Do we want to rely on an AI to determine whether or not we are having human enough conversations?
No, 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 absolutely
Right.
not. No. But that's, pardon my language, but that's something that is wildly important. But the thing is that it doesn't need to be an all or nothing situation. You don't turn everything over.
Hmm.
You have, okay, so this is also something that I know we've talked about this before. Um, I just can't remember the percentages, and it's totally escaping my brain. What is the lowest threshold that is considered good for a QA, like
Right. So
human QA?
the number of reviews that you do, you
Hmm.
mean? So,
Yeah. Like for
right.
any one rep or something.
So if we're talking about sample sizing, there is
Yes.
actual math and like calculators that you can implement to calculate the appropriate amount of tickets that you need to do for the volume that your team is communicating. If
Hmm.
you're asking for like a baseline general ballpark, what should I do? It's about 5% of the conversations that you're having.
I couldn't remember if it was 3 or 5%.
Yeah,
And
5.
so if I'm sitting there trying to do 5% for every single one of my reps, that is that's a lot.
Massive.
Um, yeah. And I very rarely, unless I only had a couple of reps and it was a relatively low volume, which I've been in that situation, um, I was rarely hitting that.
Right.
However, say we get an AI implemented and it checks 100% of all interactions 80% of the way.
Yeah.
The 20% that it doesn't check is tone or what have you. The actual, like, is the human interacting with the person in a sufficiently
Yeah.
kind and so on way? That's 20%. And then you hire to the appropriate way. You don't necessarily hire up to the number of QA reps that you would have had, but you hire up to the number that is required to service that 20%. And also to
Right,
check their work, to check the AI's work and tune it, because there's
right.
always going to be a tuning aspect. And to have the important conversations with the reps that the AIs are surfacing, in
Yeah.
my opinion. But
Yeah,
I'm
I
just one guy.
think no, I wholeheartedly agree with this. I mean, I've been involved with developing some of that software in the past year, and I think in the past, QA has been predominantly aimed at performance reviews. Like we're going to spot check your work. We're going to do 2 or 3 reviews of your work every week, and then we're going to pull out some details and see how you've done. Um, does it give an accurate overview of how you do consistently? Maybe a little, but not. It's not a deep dive. It doesn't surface any consistent problems if you're just spot checking, especially if you have agents doing different cues. If they're doing email or chat or phone or social media, these are all different types of communication, and the way that you score them is different, right? So if you're going to do 3 or 4 conversation reviews among all of those different channels that they maintain, what are you,
You might
it's
only get
like,
one of each, or you might miss one entirely.
right, it's like CSAT. It it's a no, I mean, that's what it is. It's a vanity thing to do. It's like, okay, we need to have performance checks, so we're going to do the bare minimum that we're capable of doing because to be honest, our team leads are overwhelmed with the work that they're going to have to do on all the other things that are on their plates. Um and if we say that we've done a couple of reviews per agent, at least we've had some form of performance evidence thing that we can pass on to HR, is my opinion.
That's interesting. See, I have never passed on to HR. Like that's never been part of my flow.
Hmm,
And unless there's like some reason for termination or something like that, this person is
right,
just consistently terrible at their job,
right.
or something. Is that is that the context you were talking about, or
Sometimes for some companies, they do QA because HR is asked for performance evidence. In some
oh,
cases,
okay.
it's part of the information that a team lead will pass on to HR, saying this is our 6 month performance check. I've done reviews every week for this particular agent. We've identified 1 or 2 issues. We've worked on them, and this is the result. So it's not so much the actual reviews that get passed on to HR. It's the
It's the scoring.
the scoring and the identification of things that might be going wrong or that might be going right. Um, it's part of performance reviewing. The basis of it
It's a
is
way
performance
to,
review.
yeah, it's a way to apply numbers to something that is functionally
Yeah,
qualitative. It's
yeah,
quantitating a qualitative thing.
exactly.
So cool. I just had never really thought of an HR aspect to it unless we're showing someone the door. So and I have other mechanisms for that as a general rule. So
So for you, in the work that you have done with building teams, have you just used that as a tool to help the agent then?
I yes, as a general
Okay.
rule for me, QA is it is that. It is something for coaching and because they're different to I mean, this is so obvious. There's just different types of people. There's
Right,
different some people are like, "Hey Ash, just tell me I'm doing a good job or tell me that I'm messing up and we'll go over it verbally and
right,
tell me where I can do better." And that's all I need.
Right.
Some people need a written report with exactly what is going wrong and numbers associated with it and so on.
Right.
QA reports are like invented for that type of brain. And there's all sorts of things in between. My kid, my boy
Mm-hmm.
is that latter one. Like if I tried to do that former thing, it would probably destroy his feelings. But if I have that latter one with the numbers and everything, he's on it. He is like, that is exactly what he needs and wants. So, whereas
Interesting.
I only want the former. So,
Do you think there's also a cultural aspect to that? And I'm not just talking about like the different states in the US. I'm talking about an
oh,
international context.
that's what I pretty much assumed was an international one. Um, I couldn't go country by country and tell you which ones would prefer which, but
Right.
I would definitely say so. Um, one that springs to mind is the kind of Teutonic, Germanic kind of thing is going to prefer like structured reports and so on.
I can
Is
tell
is my
you I can share with you from a Dutch perspective because I'm from the Netherlands, right? I mean, you know this,
please?
but the people who are watching this might
What
not
the
know.
hell you
And
say?
I know. From a Dutch perspective, and I was talking to someone from the US actually a couple of weeks ago about
Not
this.
me. It wasn't me.
Not it wasn't you, no. But I was explaining to them um like a lot of people know that the Dutch are very straightforward and very honest about their opinions. With I mean this is true. It's a cultural it's a given thing.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean I'm gonna be very straightforward and very open and to be honest with you, oftentimes we don't realize just how straightforward we're being because it's such a cultural thing. But I will tell you the flip side
Yeah.
of that. Um, the reason we as Dutch sometimes have issue with working with people from even the UK or people from the US is because there's layers to their communication or to your communication.
Oh,
For us, if you layer your meaning, that's a sign of you being dishonest. That's a sign of you not respecting me enough to just be upfront with stuff. So if you're going to come at me with feedback that is layered, I'm going to go, why are you
I don't.
holding back?
Or
Do we not have like an okay relationship? Do we have a problem here?
yeah.
I will start to question the relationship that we have if you are not being upfront and honest with me. Whereas, and I've had to learn this working in a US centric market that I need to layer my communication because people will perceive me as being the same way as I will perceive them if they're not being honest or not being upfront, I should say, because it's not about being honest.
Well,
Yeah.
and so my experience has been that it's not even that it's an honesty thing. Frequently, it's because I had never caught the honesty aspect of it. I have caught that there's just not been a comprehension of the lower levels.
Right.
So I, when providing feedback to other cultures, verbally
Hmm.
especially, um, I try to be as upfront and clear as possible without subterfuge or anything. Because if you, not subterfuge, that's the wrong word. Try not to soften blows or just say, hey, Ines, with all love and respect or whatever, you done fucked up
Right.
and we need to fix it now. type of thing.
Right.
Um,
I, as a Dutch person,
because if
expect
I
you to say
just
that every time.
because if I said this issue here needs a bit of work and so on, you might think, oh, well, I'll get to it soon or something along those lines,
Yep.
because you may not understand this is a real damn problem and you'll get to it next week or something along those lines.
Right.
And so like I've got it around here somewhere. This book that I'm dropping things, When Cultures Collide,
Mm-hmm.
is amazing. And it breaks down. I mean, it's now a couple of years old, and I feel like it needs to be updated with like the COVID version, because now that everybody has
Yeah.
like gone a little star crazy, it talks about cultural factors in communication, how much space to leave between each other when talking to them physically, so on
Wow.
and so forth. Like
Okay.
customs when eating, behavior at meetings and negotiations, manners and taboos, so on and so on and so on. Great
That's
book. Author is Richard D. Lewis.
I will make sure to
So
link that in the description of the episode, just so people can find it. Um, that's an awesome resource. I didn't know about it. I do know about the cultural map. I forget the author.
yes, that is also good. I just don't have a copy of it.
Yeah, it's an amazing book that will tell you or help you understand how different cultures appreciate forms of communication. So things like, if you receive feedback, would you like to do that in a public setting or would you like to do that in private? Um, if I have praise, would you like to do that in a public setting or would you like to do that in private? I think that's a really important thing to remember if you're a team lead and you're providing feedback to your agents. It's like how, and we were talking about this earlier before the recording, some strategies of giving feedback, if it's done publicly, you might think, oh, it's, you know, it's our business model to do things very publicly and openly and document everything. So everything to do with feedback has to be recorded as well within our process. That might work for like a European setting where that kind of feedback is expected. But as soon as you go to Asia, that becomes a, people just disappear. People will up and quit if you do that.
Yeah. And exactly what I said at the time. I would quit. Like
Right.
I would, even the idea of it now, I would just melt and like disappear into the cracks. Um, Also up here, this sounds dorky, and I get it,
I like dorky. Hit
but
me.
but five love languages,
Yes.
um,
Slightly problematic,
even
but still.
oh, hugely problematic. Don't even say slightly, hugely problematic. But understanding how people communicate and give and receive, this is affection, but it's all, everything
Yeah.
translates into the business world
Yeah.
very, very significantly. And so if you have you don't even have to read this. Like there's like listicles all over the internet that
Yeah.
summarize it in like 5 minutes. So go read one of those, get to know it, and you can apply that to your team, and it'll help.
I think one of the most interesting things anyone has ever said to me about the five love languages concept is a mutual friend of ours, Valentina. She said,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's not about how, it's not the treat others like you want to be treated. Like, don't love the way that you want to be loved. Love them the way they want to be loved. And I think
Yes,
the same
exactly.
goes for a quality setting where we do have to be critical about someone else's work. We do have to kind of find the faults, and that's difficult sometimes. But you can do that in a way that resonates with the person who's receiving it. And you need to be aware of how they want to receive that. So, in my opinion, before you start thinking up scorecards, start thinking up, you know, this is how often I'm going to be doing a review, and this is the structure I'm going to take, and this is the da da da, whatever. You need to be talking to your agents and go, right, I want to give you reviews on your work. I want to provide you with stuff that resonates with you. What works best for you? And don't leave it open. Like, have questions, very specific investigative questions
Mhm.
prepared, but have a sit down with them and go, all right, you tell me how I need to bring this to you. Because I can do this in like a million different ways, but you tell me what you need. Pick one.
So
Uh,
not just have questions, have answers that like multiple
right.
choice, would you prefer A, B, C, or D type of thing.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
love that. I love that. How do you really create something that fits the plurality of everyone? You know, do you just,
So, okay, my ideal setup, and I love how we just flip the whole interview backwards onto me. Thank you.
I'm allowed to ask
Yes,
questions.
you
Come
are.
on, man.
So, my ideal scenario when it comes to doing QA is we have a QA specialist, right? And I
Mhm.
understand that this is for existing teams, teams that are a bit bigger. Ideally, I have a QA specialist whose only job is to run the QA program. You
Mhm.
also have the team leads who are in charge of people managing, and you have the ICs, the individual contributors. Now, that whole QA process should be a loop. So, QA does the gathering of the data and the storytelling, as I like to call it. They write a report on this specific agent and go, I've noticed this, this, and this. They pass that to the manager. The manager takes that information as like the very similar to a KPI report that they get on
Mhm.
whatever CSAT scores, even though we hate CSAT scores and we want it to leave.
Time to first response is too low or whatever.
Whatever you can think of.
Yep.
They get that as a report, and they have the individual relationship with the agent to sit down in the one-on-one and have that relationship and have that conversation. So
Mhm.
it's not QA, in my opinion, that needs to define how it should be brought to the IC. It's the manager's job eventually to sit down with the agent and have that as part of their management style to ask, if I give you feedback, how do I do that? That's not the
Got
QA's
it.
job. The QA specialist's job is to gather data and translate it. That's the only thing that they need to be doing.
I like it.
In terms of tools, because you said earlier that you like
Excel
tools to.
spreadsheets all day, every
Oh
day. That's
no,
all I ever want.
I'm gonna cut
Nope.
the call right now, Ash. I'm just sorry. That's no.
Oh, I love to troll.
Spreadsheets are of the devil. We can agree with that, right?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
I'm extraordinarily comfortable with them, but I would never set that up as being like certainly not long term
Tell me
anything.
why. Because
Like,
people who are going to watch this are watching this because they want to learn about the QA process, right? We have
sure, they're un they're
pre-existing.
unmanageable. They're like it's just simply not a solution for something like that. You wouldn't
I'm
use
so curious
Excel
now.
to manage like your entire P&L for profit and loss
No,
for like a 10,000 employee company. Like that's just not something you would do. You would
no,
use software that is designed for that be, because there's software that was designed for that.
right.
Um, you wouldn't use it as an actual database. At the very least, you would use Access, not Excel. Please don't use Access uh, for anything ever. Just set it on fire. That's really what it should be used for. But anyway, um, don't use Excel.
Yeah. Yeah, I have been part of at least one experiment where spreadsheets were used. And I mean, I see this all the time with clients who come in and they're like, "Oh, we use like Google Forms and then Zapier to automatically put it into a Google Docs." And I'm like, "Okay, is that just
And the
because
thing
it's
is,
cheap?"
no, it's because there's I don't know what the new hotness software is these days. I know Klaus, I know Loris, I know a few others that are out
Yeah,
there. Um, and all of those I know only because I know people who work there. Like that's because I don't live in this space.
right.
I know all the CRMs, all of them. We can talk about that all day long.
Yeah,
Um, but if I had to do it today and I had no budget for it, I would probably do exactly what you just mentioned. I would probably
yeah.
set up a form, and instead of Google Sheets, I'd probably put it into Notion because that's just what
All the
I'm
hip
best
kids.
at.
Yeah.
What else? What else would you do if no budget? I have set up. It is embarrassing how many times I have set up a stopgap solution using my own personal credit card because my company just simply would not pay for
Yeah.
anything, and I just had to do it.
So one of the questions that I get often is how do I talk to management about the importance of QA? And it's like it's as if we're still stuck in that mindset of the people who talk to customers are not worth the investment. And I'm not pointing fingers at anyone in particular, but it's
No,
usually the people who are making decisions about money who are like
yeah.
that a QA program, QA effort, it doesn't really show me return on investment, right? Bottom line,
The-
that's going to show up on my spreadsheet as a cost and not something that directly reflects income. And I'm like, but it these are the only people who are talking to your customers. These are the people who are the face of your company, of your brand. It takes 7 to 15 positive interactions to negate a negative one. That means
mhm.
marketing has to do a lot of work to negate a poorly functioning customer support team. It means sales has to do overtime in order to win customers who've seen the reviews online and go, maybe not. A well functioning customer support team or a customer success team, they bring in the money. They maintain the relationships. They maintain the lifetime value of a customer. I'm going on a tangent. I'm sorry.
No, I'm here for the tangent. So I went down a huge rabbit hole because I wanted to find and quote that metric, the 1 to 17
ROI.
or whatever,
Yeah.
uh, in order to undo the good experience to bad experience type of thing. One guy did the research on it like 15 years ago. It hasn't been replicated. And when I reached out to him, one, he was a dick. And two, he acknowledged that he has not done the any additional research on it and suggested that I do it myself.
Wait,
So
this is the guy about the it takes so many positive experiences to
takes
negate. Okay.
one bad experience. So just so you're aware, like certainly in this case, we don't need to redo it or anything,
Hmm.
but I no longer quote that because if anybody calls me on it, I don't have
Fair enough.
scientific data to back it up, which is very
I mean,
frustrating because
I'm
I genuinely believe it, but I don't have anything, and I'm not a scientist to.
so I'm not gonna cut this from the recording because I think it's important to check these things. And like I said, I'm Dutch. You need to be correcting me, otherwise I'm not gonna trust you. So I'm not gonna cut it.
Well, then,
We're gonna keep it. Um, I do think even if that research is bogus, I do think there's a source a source of truth in it because we all know that winning trust after you've broken it is so much harder. And
wildly
the
difficult.
number on it, the percentages on it don't really matter. The fact of the matter is if you screw up as a company, as a brand, as an organization, you screw up in the way that you treat your customers, they're going to run off and they are going to tell other people and people will go, "You know what? I'm not going to do that." I've seen that last year where I started talking to clients and potential clients in June saying, "Listen, you need to start working on your customer satisfaction, your quality, overall conversational quality now in order to have a good December, especially if you're relying on the December month to bring in a lot of money for your business if you're, a retailer or something. June at the latest is when you need to start working on that. Preferably it's a continuous process, but now
Right.
please."
Yeah.
And there were companies who were like, "Actually, you know what? That makes sense. And we're going to do that. We're going to work on how we talk to customers." And come December, the customers that they already had in June were happy enough to stay in December. The companies that were like, we're going to rely on
Yeah.
marketing, we're going to boost marketing, come November, and we've always done that. It's going to be fine. It's always worked for us. Only it's an economical crisis and no one's got money to spend. And the
Exactly.
heat bills in December are effing ridiculous. And no one wants to spend money with a company that they don't trust, right? So
Exactly.
I don't really care about what the exact number is on that whole concept. I do care about the fact that companies still seem to not understand how vitally important customer support and customer success are to their business.
And so that's the me part. And
Yeah.
putting it back, their quality.
Yeah.
Um, when when it really comes down to it, I can build the best team in the world. I can
Hmm.
hire the best people in the world. They're still going to mess up. They're going to have bad days.
Of course.
I'm not I'm not interested in policing everyone's day. I'm not interested in finding every single one of their mess ups and taking them to the mats for it and so on. I definitely because I don't want to be and I don't want to treat people in ways that are crappier than how I want to be treated. But when it starts becoming a pattern, when it starts becoming like an ongoing issue, we have to have guardrails in place. And
Yeah.
I'm only one person, and my leads or supervisors or managers are only one people, and frequently they've got, I mean, I try and cut it off at 10, at the absolute outside, but usually 3 to 8 people that they're responsible for,
Hmm.
they can't be everywhere. That's
Right.
why QA exists. So circling it all the way back around, people come to you and they say, how do I make people care? How do I get buy-in for QA? I would like, and we just talked about like there's not studies that support that thing. I'm sure that there's no studies about the ROI on QA. I have been agitating and pushing for and want studies for the ROI of support. But
Me too.
dear God, would there be an amazing study for QA specifically? Because, dude, think about how much more money a functional support department makes, a functional success department, one where if I've got a guy who is giving bad information, who's being rude, who is not cross-selling and upselling, not once or twice, but every single time,
Consistently. Yeah.
always, all of the different deals he could be missing out on and so on. And I catch him on week 3 as opposed to month 9
Yeah.
because it's just me.
Right. Right.
Like
Right. Yeah.
that that pays for the QA person
Yeah.
probably. Like there, that's how
Absolutely.
you, and that's
Yeah.
one person. Um,
I
that's how
think
you get the buy-in.
I think that is a beautiful point for us to kind of wrap this whole episode up. No, I do. I think
No, I
pay someone to check your quality. Like invest in
yeah.
this because it makes you money. I think that is the best outcome of an episode that I could think of. Yes. Uh, yeah, absolutely agree with you 100% there. And if anyone is listening and is a scientist in whatever capacity and can do that research for and with us, that would be amazing because I would love to have those numbers.
Yeah, data
Yeah.
scientist, and I
Yes,
am
please.
very, very like whatever kind of information you need or partnership,
Let me
I am here.
participate. Yeah, let me do the work. I'm happy to do the work. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Ash, thank you so, so much for being a guest. I appreciate your thoughts and your expertise and your knowledge. You're awesome. Please come back at some point. I'm sure we're going to have many more conversations about this. And yeah, just
I
thank you.
appreciate you letting me come on. I'm sorry for ranting and talking so much.
That's okay. No, this is, I mean, you're supposed to talk a lot on a podcast, right? That's the purpose.
Nonetheless, thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
lovely day.